Hey everybody, welcome along. Really pleased for those of you who are joining me live and for other people that are listening to the recording. This is the first in 6 sessions I'm going to do, and it's all about sharing what we've seen from a talent perspective with the startups we've worked with over the last few years. So a bit of context. My name's Alan Furley. I'm CEO and co-founder of a recruitment business called ISL Talent. We are based in the UK and work with startups and scale-ups, typically seed to Series A, 10 to 50 employees who are looking to scale, mostly in the commercial go-to-market and the technology teams they've got, and also some of the peripherals around leadership, etc. So I'm a founder myself. I have worked with founders of many startups over the last few years. And when I look at some of the things that happen as you're growing from a founding team to a scaling team, there's some things that are often coming up and that any founder would probably feel resonates with them to a certain degree. So those things would be, you're going from that founding to scaling team, and that means growth and new roles and potentially hiring people who are different than you've hired before, hiring into different roles. Maybe you've previously outsourced something. Maybe you're now growing a certain team or area. When you're founding a team, often you rely on people within your network, people you know, maybe you worked with them before, maybe you went to university with them, friends, families, fools, whatever label you put on them. They're people you who are joining and know they're coming into a founding team. And as you scale, no doubt you want to retain and still be consistent with what you're hiring on many levels, but it does change. You're starting to hire randoms and people are perhaps joining you somewhat for commercial reasons rather than because they're friends with you and their risk appetite is different. So there's a marked change, particularly if you've got a funding round, maybe a seed round of £1 to £5 million, then things are going to be different in many ways and consistent in others for that next phase of your journey. So that's kind of the premise to what we do as business. We help companies at that stage, but also with regards to the stuff that I'll share today and over the next few weeks across our talent methodology, that's hopefully a bit of kind of context to it. So if you've got any questions along the way, throw them into the comments and I will pick up on those. I'll also leave time at the end to answer some questions. And my intention is to run this for no longer than 25 minutes or so. So to finish by 1:30 if you're watching live. So any questions, comments, feedback along the way, let me know. If you're watching this afterwards, still really value your feedback. So drop it into the comments or drop me a message. And I've worked in recruitment for over 20 years now. And I love the industry in many ways, but also I see it as very limited in many ways. And I'll come on to sharing a bit more about our talent methodology in a minute, but where it's born out of is a realization within ISL Talent that a lot of what we were doing in recruitment wasn't really helping as much as it could have done with the key challenges the founders, the startups we're working with had. So yes, of course, they need CVs, they need bums on seats, to put it crudely. But really what often they value more is understanding exactly what roles they need. It's not always clear cut whether you should hire senior or junior, whether you should prioritize this role or another. Should you have sales and marketing as different functions or under one person? So some of those questions we felt we could answer, but how we were engaging as a recruiter was often a job spec, a CV, and hoping to make a match between the two. So one of the key questions founders had was, what roles do I need and who should I hire when? A second key thing was founders struggling a little bit with how to stand out, particularly against big firms who have well-known logos and really clear branding. As a scrappy startup with hopefully a world-changing idea, how do I stand out to the best talent and how do I attract people from across the market, particularly as I move from founding to scaling and start to hire people that aren't within my direct network? And then a third thing is that critical question, I suppose, how do you hire the right person? So it's all well and good getting CVs through and having options, but how do you have confidence that you're hiring the right person? And it won't surprise you to know there's no silver bullet, there's no guarantee you'll make the right decision, but there's a lot of things you can do to maximize your chances of making that decision correctly. So those three things what do I need? How do I stand out? And how do I hire the right person? Weren't really addressed by some of the things we were talking about when we were engaging with clients on a recruitment basis. And so that's where the talent methodology came from. We looked at where we were adding value, where we could add value, and put it together into something that is the aptly named talent methodology, which I'll share here. So talent for us is going from left to right, from talent planning to attracting the best, locating candidates and evaluating them, nurturing new hires, and then the key thing, team retention. So the content that I'll share over the next 6 sessions will cover this whole talent spectrum. Today's focus is going to be on the first part there, and the part you need to get right to really influence and maximize the value in the rest of that talent lifecycle. So the planning around what you need. And there's 4 things that I'm kind of cover today, which is around organizational charts, how you define the roles you're looking for, how you look at your reward strategy, and how you can do a recruitment health check across the board. So any questions on any of those as we come up, then drop them into comments and I'll pick up on those, but I'll also leave time along the way. And where we've worked with different clients, we've seen this work in a number of scenarios and really maximize the results that companies have got. So it's not just me talking about it, it's companies we've worked with in the last 12 months, like InSphere, Distill AI, Clue Software, and Student Crowd, who have come to us because they've been raising significant funds, and that has led to a significant and some really key hires. But they've also come to us because they wanted something different than simply recruitment. They weren't confident that just getting CVs to a particular need was going to be the most value they could get. They wanted someone who could help them across this talent methodology. And that's the stuff that I'm going to share today. So to cover the first thing then, the organizational chart. Now, you might have views and visions when I talk about org chart of something really formal and really structured and detailed. I definitely don't think you need something like that. So it could be something that's the equivalent of written on the back of a fag packet. But the point with an organizational chart, or some of the challenges that I see that an organizational chart addresses. So founders often will hire role by role. So focus on the most urgent thing and not necessarily the most important thing. Plug a gap, go again, plug another gap, go again, plug another gap. So hiring role by role can really limit your longer term planning and value you can get from having that more strategic mindset. And the key challenge is they don't consider alternatives. So they have in their head, they really need to recruit this person. They don't think through the different job titles or levels this person could be at. They don't consider whether to, as I mentioned earlier on, consolidate different functions under one person, the benefits, the limitations, the consequences of that. And another key area is that an org chart can be really useful to address issues of communication. So having an org chart can really help you to set things up with the hires you want to make, but also really importantly with the current team you've got in place. So the solution against those areas is an org chart, and it can really help join the dots between the different plans you have, look at where you can consider alternatives and choices. As with many things, getting out of your head and having it documented can be really important. And the chances are it's not just your head it needs to get out of, it's you and your co-founders, your investors, your advisors, your trusted partners, maybe your recruiter as well. People who can give you views on the plan you have with regards to an org chart and give you feedback so that you have something that is validated and can really drive a lot of your hiring strategy and tactics over the next 12 to 18 months. And that's normally the timescales that I would see this being useful on. So have something that, depending on the pace you're growing, plans out the next 18 months that you then review maybe every 3 or every 6 months. You invite feedback from whoever's relevant, your senior leadership team, your co-founders, your investors, your advisors, but everybody sees it. So it's there. If I'm an employee in your business who hasn't been involved in forming the org chart, I can still see it. And one of the reasons that I mentioned that is I felt this in my business as well. No matter how many times I've had conversations with people around the growth plans of the business, it's only kind of magical moment where I put an org chart in front of them and show them the 3 or 4 roles we may have planned in the next 12 or 18 months, that it really unlocks those conversations. I get to see how excited they are about those roles, or maybe they want to focus on one path versus another. And it really helps to facilitate conversations to bring to life what they need to do and what the business needs to do to achieve those goals and to unlock those roles. So an org chart is something that really helps you with a medium, maybe a longer term strategic plan for your talent, recruiting and retention in your business. It can allow you to have a version of the future that everybody's contributing to and everybody's aware of. And it also really helps painting a picture, whether that's someone you haven't hired yet or someone you have hired that you want to keep, and unlocking conversations around progression. So that's the first part, which is on the org chart. So moving through now, the next part I want to share with you is around job definition. So I see a lot of people who know they need to hire someone in sales. So they'll take a job description they would have used a few years back, maybe in a previous company, or they'll Google something, they'll dig something out of their files and they'll use that to frame what they're looking for. And I think that's a really bad idea on many levels. It risks this not really being about what you want, but about what someone else wants. It jumps into all sorts of assumptions around what good looks like generically rather than for your business. And it also means that you're really limited in regards to that diversity of talent. And if you're starting with predetermined ideas around what good looks like, then it can be really challenging to step outside of that and hire from a much more diverse talent pool where you're focusing on things other than 10 requirements and number of years experience. So it avoids you hiring on gut. If you have a consistent process with regards to your job descriptions, going back to the point on the org chart, it can help you get contribution from across the board. And also it means that you can be much clearer on what good looks like. And you can challenge yourself and others around you on the things you're putting in a job description so that you have that clarity on exactly what you're going to hire before you go and put effort into hiring. So one of the things that I found really useful with the startups we've worked with here, let me just share with you, is the process we go through for defining a role. Now, in my experience, many people start with the experience they need. So not even on this chart here, but I need 10 years experience. So I need someone who's worked as a marketing manager for a fintech business previously. Whereas I think they'd be better off thinking about the skills they need, the capabilities, rather than using experience as a proxy for skills. They'll think about the tasks they're doing in the job and what they would be doing day to day, the role and responsibilities. And maybe not ever, but potentially even at the end of the process, they'll think about what success looks like. So maybe sometimes it's only in 18 months' time you start to think about that. Maybe you think about it at the outset. But one of the challenges with this process is that people often start at the bottom and work their way up. Whereas when we've worked with startups and scale-ups, what we found much more energetic and much more valuable to define exactly what you need is to start at the top. Have the goal in mind, chosen a pyramid deliberately because it's the summit, it's where you want to work towards, which is what does success look like. So if I'm hiring a chief revenue officer in 18 months' time, how will I know that he or she has succeeded? What are the metrics that come to mind? Maybe some less tangible things, but what's the feeling I would get around what success is? And then flow through to the tasks and then the skills. And if I go to candidates with that purpose, there's much more chance that I get excitement and engagement from them. One point I would make is that a job description isn't a job advert. The two should be consistent, but they have different uses and they have different purposes. So I'll share more in my session in 2 weeks' time, a lot more around the attracting and really what you need to put in adverts to maximize your chance of capturing people's attention. But for now, focusing on the job description, that's probably a more functional document. You want contribution from across the board. It allows you to not put too much detail in there, but put the detail with regards to what you're looking for and crucially have that purpose there. So if you've got any questions on that, then drop them into the comments or drop me a message afterwards. That's the process we'll work through with startups to help before we run away and try and find CVs to make sure everybody, us, the founders, whoever's relevant within the startup we're recruiting for is on the same page and understands what we're going to look for before we go and look for it. Of course, there's sometimes when you go to market and you realize that you end up needing something different, but at least to begin with, putting that effort into defining it means you've got much more chance of getting it right first time, rather than having to go through a couple of cycles, incur costs with regards to time, potentially money and resources, versus a bit more time thinking through and having conversations around what you're looking for, so that you can then go more quickly and more effectively to market. So we talked about an org chart, we talked about a process for role definition. So there's two more points I'm going to cover. I'll talk at the end about recruitment health check and how you can make sure you look across that talent life cycle. But before that, let's talk about reward. And part of that definitely is around salary, but also a touch on other things. So it's really important. Say, for example, you're a founder who is raising £1 to £5 million. You probably feel that's a significant change where you're not in that bootstrap mode and really scrimping and saving and paying people considerably less than their market worth and maybe compensating for that with equity. You're starting to become a bit more grown up, but the reality is you're unlikely to be paying top dollar for the people that you're hiring. So you are still working with limited resources. That £1.5–2.5 million, not all of it is going to go on people. A significant amount will often go on the people you have within the business and the people you want within your business. But it's clear that it's not going to last forever. So you need to be really conscious about that runway still. So as part of that, you need to make sure you're not misallocating resources and you don't go to market with salaries that are way off the mark, either too high or too low. There's negative consequences on either of those different avenues. So you want to be a bit more confident in your mind. And part of that is having some data. It's also probably understanding what the market looks like. So you might reach out to a couple of friendly founders or ask your chair or your investors, I need a VP of sales. What should I be paying? How much is a lead full stack developer going to cost us to bring into the business? And you'll get some benefit from that. One of the challenges is that those people they'll know the sphere is really close to them, but they won't have that wider perspective. So you can jump onto Glassdoor, Indeed, you can look on LinkedIn, you can get a sense for the market. Again, you're probably seeing roles that are advertised which don't fully reflect roles that are being hired across the board. So we've definitely provided, I would say, lots of value to the startups we're working with. Maybe they're closing off on a funding round over the next couple of months. And as part of that, we've been introduced by investors or chairs to help them look at their budget for different roles and to make sure they have that aligned, partly to know where they're allocating their funds, but also when they do go out and start hiring, going back to my earlier point, they're not going through a couple of cycles because they haven't spent the time trying to get things right from the outset. So it's really important to have that focus on what's the level of role I'm looking for and how does the market align with that. You don't need to be top of the market. If you are bottom of the market, then maybe you can't change that. You need to be aware of that. So knowing where you stand is really important. But going beyond salary, there's a whole host of things you can offer as a startup. And some of the things from the hundreds of candidates we talk to that are really valued within that startup and scale-up world, definitely remote working is a key differentiator, particularly where big tech firms are bringing people back to the office. It's not to say you can't do that as a startup, but if you're offering remote working and flexibility, that's likely to be a differential you've got versus the wider market. Flexible benefits can be another really useful thing. So we did it in our business. We were largely paying for private healthcare for most of our team that had got to a certain level or with a certain amount of experience. And we took the decision that it probably wasn't great value. And largely that was influenced by asking them whether they valued it. A really obvious point, I suppose, to make, but talk to your team about what they benefit. And private healthcare wasn't valued by all of them. It definitely was by some, but not by others. So we switched to a flexible benefits platform. And that's worked really well to be able to put similar amounts of money into a budget for well-being and benefits, but for our team to spend that on whatever they valued rather than have decisions made for the majority that didn't hit whatever we was looking for, and to give them flexibility. So flexible benefits can be really important. And the final point can be on equity. So if you're a startup, there's no guarantee you're going to become a unicorn and realize loads of value from people that have got options over equity in your business. But it is part of the appeal and why people may decide to join you versus a late stage company, and maybe why they might forfeit a little bit of salary because of that upside in terms of risk and reward. So having equity is really important. And a couple of points on that. One tactic you can use, I recruited years and years ago for a company called Palantir, and they use this, and I've seen others copy it since. They would make 3 offers to every candidate: a high salary, low equity, a middle salary, middle equity, and a low salary, high equity. And they'd allow the candidate to choose, which really helped them to attract people at different stages of life with different financial commitments, and allowed them to maximize the resources they had, i.e. pounds for salary, but also shares, and to balance the two well. So that's one thing to think about. And the other thing, if you're offering equity, don't make it simply about number of shares or even percentage. That really won't mean much to people commonly. What's much better is to tell them a story. We are here. This is where we want to get to. If we go from that journey, we may go from a valuation of 10 million to 100 million. So we're giving you this much equity now, which maybe you touch on things like dilution, etc. Maybe you leave the detail as headline. If things go well, this will be worth this much to you. Is that a meal out? Is it a car? Is it a holiday? Is it a house? So bring it to life, the value to them. They know it's not a commitment, but it really helps to highlight to them the potential value of equity. And one of the things that we've shared in a retention report over the last few years is the things that really help to retain people, which is a massive part of that salary and reward aspect. So those are the 3 C's. Compensation is up there. So salary matters, but it's always been number 3, the 3 times we've run the survey across 500 candidates. The top 2, which have jumped around a little bit, but always kind of there or thereabouts, career progression and culture. So from the outset, when you're bringing people in, you want to be thinking about those things, and it's massively important with regards to retention, which is something I'll come into in more detail on a later session. So the final point is about recruitment health check. Now, there's problems where I see companies jump into hiring mode and not thinking about a challenge with leaking people at the other end. So they recruit 5 people, but they haven't addressed what they need to do to improve their retention, and they find they need to make another 5 hires because they've lost too many of the people they've recruited. I see others who focus all on their existing team and don't bring new people in. So when inevitably people do leave, you're never going to retain 100% of people in your business. Then you're firefighting to bring people in, and maybe you make decisions in haste that you fill a role with the person you know is not right, and you'll suffer the consequences of that 3 or 6 months down the line. So it's really important to look across your talent life cycle and understand exactly what it is you're doing well, what you're doing not so well, and what you could do differently. So one of the processes we'll go through with some of the founders that we engage with who work with us in partnership is to go through using our talent framework and going from start to finish. So the first T here at the top, in the middle, what you're looking for, that definition that we've covered today. The A, why, i.e. why someone would want to come and work for you. So how do you attract talent, which is what I'll cover in 2 weeks' time. The how do you find these people, the locating them. And then the who's the right person for you? How do you evaluate them? Thinking about that person today, so nurturing your new talent, onboarding and making sure they start well, and then keeping an eye on tomorrow. So that final T of the talent acronym, having a view on that. And of course, it's a circle you need to constantly pay attention to. We've worked with some companies who've engaged us for a day, over the course of a few months, to do projects where we do a recruitment health check with them and give them feedback, partly based on their data, partly based on what we see in the market, and that wider perspective to help them give a sense of best practice, but to make sure it's relevant to what they're looking for rather than what might you read generically in a blog. And one of the things that you can do that will help give you some insight from a personal perspective on what you're doing well within your business is to take our scorecard. So if you scan the QR code there, it'll take you 2 minutes to work through 15 questions, and that will give you a simple score across different areas, from recruitment to marketing to retention, that will help you give a sense as which are the bits of the business that you're already where you need to be when it comes to talent, and which are the ones that you might need to do some work on. As I mentioned, we do more meaningful engagements, but even jumping onto the scorecard will be a good way to start and get a quick sense check as to where you are across that talent flywheel. So bringing things to a close and to kind of summarize some of the key points. And if you've got any questions, now's the time to drop them into the chat so that I can cover those. Be always welcome to drop me a message afterwards if we haven't had time to cover it, or if you're not watching this live. So I guess a bit of a checklist for what we covered today. So do you have a 18-month organizational chart so that you can plan those roles and help from both a recruitment and a retention perspective? Do you have a process to consistently define what you're looking for? And are you confident that it helps you bring in diverse talent to the business, to hire inclusively, and to maximize your chances of measuring what matters rather than focusing on the wrong things? Do you have a competitive reward and benefit structure? If not, who can you talk to? If you're a founder building a seed stage business in the UK, more than happy to talk to you. Who can you talk to who can help you benchmark the reward strategy you have in place and make sure that will help you to recruit and, crucially, to retain the people that you have? And have you done some sort of recruitment health check, whether it's 2 minutes on a scorecard, whether it's a session with your team to ask them what they're doing well and what you think they think you could do better? Then have you gone through that health check process? Now, this is all from our talent process, which I'm showing in detail here. So that talent across the top I showed earlier, these are the different things we do to work with clients. So we don't do all of these things with all our clients, but if you want to talk to some of those businesses I mentioned earlier on, those seed and Series A stage startups and scale-ups that are delighted with the people we found for them, it's partly around the people, but it's also around the process. And this is how we work with them to really help them understand how they can hire better and put in a position through our partnerships where we can help to find the best people, because we've worked very hard to define what good looks like and go out there with their branding, with their offering at core, so that we can find the right people for their journey and to maximize their impact. So if there's questions and you're watching this as a recording, feel free to drop me a message. LinkedIn is a good place for that, for sure. I will be doing the next session, which is the A of talent. It's all about attracting the best. So if you've listened to this session, you've hopefully moved forward with a plan to define what you're looking for. Before you jump out and go and try and find these people, you need to think through the story you're telling and how that matches up to what the market's looking for. And that's more on what I'll share in 2 weeks' time on Monday lunchtime once again. But in the meantime, thanks very much for watching. And if you've got any questions, feedback or comments, drop them into the event page here or drop me a message through, and look forward to seeing you next time out. Thanks once again.